rule of 3 is what is essential when addressing a survival situation. You can go 3 minutes without air, 3 hours without shelter, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. If you're only picking 5 items for a survival event, it's crucial to pick items with multiple purposes, because that will aid you in your survival the most. This information will help you someday because you never know when you'll be in a situation where survival is essential, such as a plane crash or when doomsday comes. Also, take it from me as a Girl Scout because I've actually done a survival weekend before using some of these items. If you're only picking 5 items, it is best to pick a knife, a pot, fishing line and 5 hooks, a bow and arrow, and 5 pounds of provided carbs and starches. First, a knife is the first thing you need to have on your list. Patterson 2011, 20 Survival Uses for a Knife, tells us the different ways to use a knife. Multiple uses includes making a shelter. You can use a knife to cut limbs and vines to make a shelter, whether it's a lean-to, an igloo type shape, which would probably be best for the winter time. And also you can use a knife to skin game for their fur to help make your shelter a little bit warmer inside. Another way to use a knife is for defense against wild animals. You can tie it to a spear, or you can make sharpened spears to help protect your perimeter around your camp, which would be the best in aiding for your sleeping, which would give you more energy to do other things. Now that you know how to use the knife, let's talk about how the pot is the best item to use next. The pot is the second item. Hydration comes before food on the scale of things, the essentials that you need. Mack Welch 2015, 10 Ways to Use a Metal Can can be applied to using a pot. First of all, you can use a pot to boil your water, which would be the best way to sanitize it, or you could also use it to melt snow, which is in Patagonia, which would be where we are surviving. When boiling the water, it's better to use a pot instead of doing sterilizing tablets or a straw or something like that, because the pot has multiple uses for it, and that's really the best when you're surviving. A pot can also be used to cook food. As Mack Welch tells us, you can put it upside down and cook on top of it with the fire underneath, because that is the best way to cook your food, like I've done at campouts before when I've cooked bacon on top of it, and that makes a makeshift stove. Another way Mack Welch tells us is that you can do what's called a chicken in a bucket technique. Again, the pot is upside down and the fire is all around it, but the food is up inside the pot. And this is essentially a long cooking process and would be like an oven, and it can be used when you have other things to do, if you're making a shelter, or you need to go gather things, or you need to go find other food. Using a pot is the second most essential item, but let's talk about the third, the fishing line and the hooks. The fishing line and hooks has multiple uses as well, and is best used in the hands of an experienced survivalist. Mack Welch, 2014, the 3 must-haves for a survival kit, tells us which items to use and how to use them. First of all, the fishing line and hooks can be used to collect food. If you attach it to a pole, you can make a makeshift fishing line, and what little kid has not done this before? The things that you can use as bait would be insects, worms, any other small critters you could find, depending on what you're trying to catch. And there is, I believe it's salmon that's most known in Patagonia, different types of salmon. Also, the fishing line and hooks can be used to support shelter. If you use a lashing technique, you can use fishing line to help support your structure, and you can put limbs together and use this technique, or you can use another one that's called a running lash, and that's used if you use planks, which would be most essential for building a shelter. Also, you can use your fishing line to tie up food during the night. If you have extra leftover from dinner or something like that, you can tie it up in a tree to keep it away from wild animals. This fishing line would have 10 pounds that it can hold, which can help you sleep better at night once again. The fishing line and hooks is only one way of collecting food, so let's address the other way, the bow and arrow. The bow and arrow can be used in a variety of different different ways. First of all, the bowstring can be used for warmth. Using a bow drill technique, you can use the bow to help propel the friction stick and help make a fire up underneath, and that can be then moved to the big pile of sticks. I've only done this once. But it is better to use a bowstring than, say, a fire starter or flint and stone, because again, the bow and arrow would have other essential ways that it can be used. Also, you can use the string of an arrow to build a shelter. It's not ideal, but in the circumstances, you may need that extra string to help tie. Also, a bow and arrow can be used for the obvious purposes as a bow to help collect food. If you're fishing, you can use a string and tie it to the end of the bow and shoot it into the water and use it as bow fishing. Another way is to use it just as a bow and arrow and use it to kill big game, and that would be a high source of protein. This is all told to us by Stewart 2011, the Takedown Survival Bow and Arrow. So now that we know how to get our protein using a bow, let's address why carbs and starches are the best. The 5 pounds of provided carbs and starches is the best source of food. K 2012 tells us that the provided nutrient value is not easily found in the wintertime can best be provided through carbs and starches. Energy is the one thing that is needed and is provided through legumes, lentils, and is related to the potatoes and flour and things like that. Carbs aid in sleeping better and helps with energy levels, and that is what would help me get through the survival period if I'm low on protein or water or other essentials. Also, bringing the carbs and starches would help me aid in finding other protein and help me get other things such as gathering shelter and things that need energy. Carbohydrates provide energy for physical activity, brain function, and organ function. Also, it aids in producing serotonin, which would help my mood and help aid in finding other sources of food. In conclusion, these are the essential things that you would need to pack for a survival event in a cold environment. Remember the rule of 3 and how each item aids with that. The knife is used for shelter, the pot is used for water, the fishing line, the bow and arrow, and the carbs and starches is your food. And again, trust these because I am a Girl Scout, and that is the best way to use these items and the best way to aid in a cold environment. If you've picked other items, you will not be as successful, and you should consider changing for the sake of survival.